shit.
Hey, Hector. Good
What
morning.
up?
How you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, got you to
How are
sit
you
down
doing?
right at the hair of your chinny chin chin
Hey,
there.
it's a story of my life.
Now, you know what? The story of your life is that you get shit done before it actually becomes an emergency. And when you need something done, you call Hector and it gets done right then and there, right? That's the whole point of Hector.
Absolutely. We prioritize what's most important before it catches on fire, and I think that's kind of the name of the game with this business, right? Like, before we know it, things move and shift. And I mean, gosh, you've seen it. You've been in the business a really, really long time. What's interesting is that despite how much, we watch and read and listen, things continue to change right before our eyes, right? Some of the stuff that we talk about and we kind of expect, and other things that are just the way the world is today, right? And, obviously it's kind of our job, if you will, to stay on top of everything, right? And to provide, more importantly, solid advice, right? Provide very good advice to clients. And and here we are, right?
I know. It's Tuesday, February 7th, dude. I mean, last month just blew by. I've been busier than ever before. I'm working with a few listings and I'm working with a lot of buyers. Buyers have actually entered the market. It's crazy.
Wow,
it's just
awesome. Well, then we should be sitting down.
Yeah. So, well,
that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get your pipeline on the display here, and let's go over it.
Yeah, let's call each and every one of them. Plug them. Call them live.
Meeting.
Hey, Jen, you're live on YouTube.
Where are we with that approval?
Yeah. So rates have been going up and down. What's going on what's going on? I mean, tell me.
For sure. I mean, I think, kind of the big news really that surfaced kind of over the last week is that the Fed has raised rates again, right? What's interesting is despite that, and one of the biggest fallacies is that every time they raise rates, that mortgage rates also go up, right? And that's not the case, right? Obviously, the Fed is here to control, our monetary policy. And they really don't like things being too hot or too cold. They like things staying just lukewarm, right? And one of the tools that they use to do so is the federal funds rate. So it's a rate at which banks exchange money, and it's the rate that us as a consumer, I guess you could say, we pay for when we finance a vehicle, when we charge money on a credit card, or when we exercise some cash from our home equity lines of credit, right? And the good news with interest rates is that we've seen a very steady decline since about October, November, right? And we've seen rates drop about 1%, right? So that's been actually really good news, and I feel that's in huge part why we're busy today, right? The reality is that news and media really affect the consumer, right? And with a few months of rather steady and lowering interest rates, we've seen a significant rise in activity, particularly over the last month. In the mortgage world, one of the ways that we, I guess you could say, evaluate activity is by mortgage applications, right? And in January, they were up about 30%, right? That means that people are approving, submitting applications, we're running credit, we're approving them to buy, right? You guys tend to see a lot of activity in open houses. That's kind of one barometer you guys use, right? And then obviously, ultimately, what's on the market also, and then what goes into contract. So our rates have been declining. I think today, standard 30-year fix is about 6.3%.
Okay.
And for in many scenarios are currently under 6%. Okay. For a moment here, we were under 6%. And so we're really kind of settled in to a very normal interest rate range, right? And I think that's also in part what's helping our consumers come out of the woodwork to step forward again and say, hey, why don't we revisit this, right? Because what happens with interest rates go up is they affect affordability, right? We just simply can't qualify for as much home, and our monthly payments go up. And we saw that happen significantly last year, and it really peaked in October. And I think a lot of that conversation, we were talking about, there's opinions out there that were thinking we might hit 9 and 10%. And well, I didn't think that was entirely wrong. We almost hit about 8%, right? But I think a lot of that, to be honest, is probably behind us. It's probably behind us, right? And so I think this is the new norm. And I do feel that moving forward, later on this year, Q2, Q3, and 4, we're going to see rates continuing to go down a bit, just a little bit, right? I think our new norm really is probably going to be somewhere in the 5s, and which I think is great, right? Because it allows borrowers to qualify for more, and it's just kind of a happy medium that I think is going to work for us.
Right. And I think you mentioned it yesterday when we were talking on the phone, is everybody was used to, for like a year and a half, free money at 2.5%. And that's why everybody jumped in. And the backlash of that is when you can afford more, then you have to put more into the house. That means you pay more for the house. So it really stays the same, right? It makes it frustrating because we're used to seeing 15, 25 offers per house. Now we have 15, 25 houses for every buyer. But that's going to normalize, and it is normalizing, right?
It did shift a little bit. I think the reality of that market that we were in the last few years is unrealistic. That's not a normal market, right? And the thing is that human nature, we have very short-term memory. Right, we have very short-term memory, right? And I mean, we've never seen rates that low, and I just don't believe we can ever get that low again, right? 2s and low 3s. I mean, that's just crazy, right? But when we look back prior to BC, before COVID, and historically over the last 40 years, I mean, we're in a very normal interest rate range right now.
Yep.
Right, and when we look at all the other barometers that you guys go off of, like days on the market and percentage over asking and all this stuff, we're in a very normal to very strong range. I mean, I don't know, you'd be better to
Yeah, I mean, I can go over just like a high and lows. I mean, that's really the whole function of today. Tuesdays, we typically go over the highs and lows, right? And like yesterday, this last week, we had 53 sales in Santa Clara County, which traditionally,
sales. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, 53 sales, single family homes, right? All throughout the county, single family, not PUDs, not townhouses, condos. We're just talking about single family residences. 53 sales. The week before, I'll put it on the thing real quick for you.
Cool.
Last week we had 60, right? We had 59 houses sold. That means they actually closed, right? So the houses are consuming. People are out there buying. And 2 weekends ago, I had 2 open houses. Sunday we had 16 sets of people during the finals, during the Niner finals, right? During the football game, and we still had people showing up. People are serious. Yeah. The serious buyers are still out there. When it's raining and you see people going into open houses, it means that the market is serious, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. There's fair weather buyers out there all day long, right? And there's still those buyers, and we talked about them yesterday. There's those buyers that have been on the fence for 10, 15 years. And I'm going to wait for the market to crash. I'm going to wait for the market to crash. Well, the last 10, 11 months is when the market crashed. It didn't crash like we expected it to,
right?
But it went down a little bit. We saw 5 to 8% contraction, and that's pretty much all you're going to get, right? Houses are still selling for over. Look at the one here in Mountain View, right? I'm sorry. The one here in Mountain View it went for 131% over list price. Now, my contention on that is it should have been listed at, closer to 1.9. It listed at 1.4. And And then you look at the lowest list price to sales price, this one Crescent Drive, it sold 73% under because that was probably listed over because the house needed work. So it's all location, price, and condition, right? So if you look at these houses, we'll get to this real quick.
That's definitely one thing I've noticed, and especially in speaking with many colleagues like yourself, I mean, now more than ever, it really matters who you work with, right? Because for the houses that sit, it's either, poor pictures, poor staging, or just in poor condition, right? And so,
Exactly.
if that's the case, then you really just have to be careful how you price it, right? It just seems like the houses in desirable areas that have great curb appeal, they're moving, right? And then, houses that aren't, they're just not selling as quick as they used to, right? A year and a half ago, it didn't matter what the heck it was gone, in a matter of days, it seemed like.
It absolutely did not matter what condition it was back before. It was really easy. And, you get the thing, it's so easy to sell houses. No, it's not, because when the market turns or you have a house that's overpriced, how do you deal with that, right? And I mean, this one right here, this is Crescent Drive in San Jose. It listed at 1.99. The listing agent, I'll tell you right now, the listing agent didn't say, hey, we should list it at $2 million. It was the mindset of the seller saying, my house is worth $2 million. There's another house over here on Hull. You and I talked about it with another client of ours, right? They think the house is worth $2 million and it's listed at 1.6 now. They had it listed before, nothing, crickets. Now it's down to 1.6, and now they're getting a little bit of feedback. It's the same thing right here, right? This one's in a lot better condition than the one on Hull, and that's just the way it is. This one listed for $2 million and went for 75%, well, 73 point whatever underneath. And then, I mean, you're still, and then the most expensive house is $4 million. Crazy, right? But it's a beautiful house. It's in Los Altos. Where is it? Look at that thing. The thing's gorgeous.
Love it. Big one story.
But look at the staging. Look at the coloring. Look at the upgraded everything. Those aren't the cheap windows that you get at Lowe's. Those are high-end Anderson, right? So, I mean.
So what do you think from a seller's perspective? I mean, is it a good time to sell? And
absolutely.
Are we seeing a lot of new homes hit the market? Like, is that what our inspectors are saying? Is that what you're seeing around the office? Like, are homes coming to the market, and is it a good time to sell and why?
We still have a very truncated, low inventory compared to what we were seeing. If you looked at inventory, as a matter of fact, I think, let's see if I have something. Inventory watch. See, this is San Jose, single family homes, right? These numbers right here. Last year, we were at 500, 600 homes, right? Right now, well, number one, January, February, and March is one of the slower times of the year traditionally.
Right.
March, April, May is our selling season. So what happened was houses that naturally consumed, right? Those are houses that sold. Houses got frustrated, so they took them off market. They're going to fix them up and wait until March, April, May to put them back on market, because that's what's going to happen. So watch, when you see March come around in 3 weeks, you're going to see a major spike in those numbers.
In homes available for sale.
In home, these are the inventory homes right here, right? I'm not talking about actual sales. This is just San Jose, not Santa Clara County, right?
Okay,
so
just San Jose, got it. Because I did a call with a group last week, and I had looked up in Santa Clara County, 989 homes, condos, and townhomes for sale.
Right.
With a population of 2 million people, it's crazy, right? And then 529 were under contract. Santa Cruz County, speaking to another group, they had 209 for sale, 209 with 84 in contract, right? And that just seems just like extremely low inventory, which to me would say, hey, if I have something for sale, I would want to be in the market now, right? Because less options, I mean, chances are you're going to land a better offer.
And as long as you don't let your ego get involved, your house is going to sell, right? understand that you can't control what buyers are going to want or what they're willing to pay. You might think, oh, my house is worth $2 million and it sits for 6 months. And then you're going to blame the agent, right? It's not the agent. The agent's going to tell you, these are the comps. This is what I suggest we do. This is the course of action. And every time you question that, it's just going to wind up hurting your chances of having a smooth sale, right?
Sure.
You want to have multiple offers so you can use leverage. When you have one buyer coming in and saying, I'm going to pay you 20% or 25% of list price, what leverage do you have? You have none, right? So
exactly.
it behooves you, if you're going to work with an agent, listen to them. And especially, you might think, oh, well, there's only 250 houses in San Jose that are actively for sale. Yeah. But there's also a lot of houses that are 90 days on market. There's 144. Now, this is multiple counties, right? Multiple counties, the 10 counties in Monterey County.
Do you ever have a challenge? Do you ever have a challenge with a client? You ever run into like just difficulty with trying to, and this both sides actually, like whether you're trying to list a property or making an offer to determine what the value of a house is? Is it sometimes challenging to explain that to a client or even for yourself? I mean, you've been in this a long time, but regardless, like, is that ever a challenge?
It's always a challenge.
Wow,
I mean, it always is. And, it's because people come from the mindset of, I need this money. I need this amount of money. And because, this is my retirement, I need this much. If you come from a mindset of abundance and you need to trust the person you're going to hire, then you will be successful in selling the house. There's a strategy that's behind it, and different agents have different strategies. Mine is typically listed a little bit lower, about 5% lower than what the market commands, and let it happen. And within days, I will get offers, right? It just happens. When you list it low, below the market, right? If the market's saying here, we come in right here, you're going to get offers. You're going to get 2 or 3 offers, and it happens. When you don't trust me and you challenge it and you say, I need to have this much money, we'll work with you, but then that's what happens, right? You see that house on.
I think you're right. You got to trust. You got to trust who you hire.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like if you're going to work with somebody, I mean, I think that's the key, right? Is that you really, allow that professional to work and obviously follow their lead.
Right. And then the other thing too is after, I want to say 25 years, we've had couple little hiccups, right? We had 18 months in 2008 and then 2018, but for 25, 30 years, it's pretty much been a seller's market.
Right.
Right. And now for the last, 10 months? No. Yeah. 10 months. The buyers are saying, you know what? I'm tired of listening to what sellers want. It's my turn. It's not a buyer's market, but I'm going to be a whole lot more picky.
Absolutely. They're just not willing to pay at any cost to have something, right? It was interesting. I saw a stat last week. Really, 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 really cool. We've had steady appreciation for basically exactly 10 years, 10 years and 1 month.
Yep.
Steady appreciation, right? And with the except of the last 5 months. So for the last 5 months, like even in our local area, we've seen flat to slightly negative growth, right? Slightly negative growth, right? So just, super interesting. And it speaks to what you're saying, right? Where we're basically, for the most part, the seller's been in control and, it's been a competitive environment for our buyers. And a big part of that, with the fact that the last 5 months have been level to a slightly negative is part of the reason that I'm on here today. And I think it's more important than ever, especially for the first time home buyer, to take advantage of this, right? This window, if things continue to trend with interest rates coming down, I mean, we're seeing it already. Our activity is starting to pick up. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be the way it's been, a frenzy that it's been the last couple of years. But I think that presents a really unique opportunity right now for buyers, especially first-time home buyers, right? Especially our buyers, majority that just don't have, unlimited stack of cash, right? That don't have an extra 100, 150 to potentially move up or cover an appraisal or what have you, right?
Yep.
And so, I think now more than ever, it's a great time to sit down with your lender, with your realtor, and discuss where you're at and be realistic about what you can qualify for and see if you can get into the market, right? Because, the wait strategy just does not pay off.
Not
And
anymore. I
so,
mean, over the last 9 months, 10 months was the time to do that, right? And I think what we're seeing now is the market's coming back. There's still houses out there that have been on market for a long time, 45, 60, 70 days. And those are going to get, those are ones that are overpriced, right? And they're eventually going to get frustrated and go away and cancel out or expire, right? There's going to be those numbers of sellers that are going to be willing to work with you, especially if you're an upward seller. If you're selling upwards, like you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you want a 4 or 5-bedroom, 2-bath, larger home, or you want to move to a different area, you're going to need to take that equity out of that house and move it into another one. There's a contingency. When the market's crazy hot, the sellers don't want to see the contingencies because that's a risk to them.
right. There's a likely that we'll be talking about bridge loans and our buy before sell program again, right? Very shortly, right?
Yep.
I mean, I know even you and I have been successful getting some clients over the last, 6 months, and right now actually getting them to transition from one house to the other by doing it in that manner, right? Traditional, hey, let's put your house on the market and then let's go write another offer, right? And I'm hearing you, and you're right. It's like our window to do that may just be, diminishing very quickly as we're seeing activity starting to rise again.
Yeah. I mean, starting March is when the market starts to heat up, right? That's our selling season, March, April, May. And you mentioned something about May 10th. Talk about that.
So May 10th, yeah, absolutely. So really what we look at and is what we follow really closely, and the whole, really the whole purpose of what the Fed's doing by raising short-term rates is to get a handle on inflation, right? And inflation is the arch enemy of mortgage rates, okay? And how it's measured is it's measured year over year. Okay, it's measured year over year, right? So we know that, like for instance, the fall of the fall of the year before, right, 2021 is when inflation started to really go up, right? And then we felt it all last year, and it was, gosh, eight something percent, right? And so with the Fed's actions, we're starting to see it go down, right? I think it was 6.5% last month, right? And so what we're doing is we're evaluating inflation last year, where it was over the next couple months, March, April, May. Okay. And based on inflation going down, we expect it to appear, right? Because we're comparing it to last year, which was high, right? And we have a lower numbers coming in this year. Now, if it appears inflation's coming down, that's going to be very positive for interest rates, right? And so one of the greatest minds in mortgage, Barry Habib, that's really his forecast, right? And
Right.
many of us follow him very closely. He's very, very good at what he does. Many of you have probably seen him on many shows, and he's one of the best out there for sure. And this is what he's saying. And I mean, he called November 10th, to be honest, and that's really this past year, and that's really since our rates have been declining. And now we're comparing higher inflation rates over the next couple of months. And so we see that that's going to fare very well with the markets, and it'll be favorable. And so we should see rates continuing to decline. And in May, we should see a nice little drop off, which will only kind of drive more sales and more buyers into the market. with lower interest rates. And so I
Yeah.
think it's a really important date to keep in mind. We're already seeing that. And it doesn't mean that, look, rates are volatile, right? Like they're going to go up and down, but they're continuing to kind of trend in a very good direction.
Right.
And we really think that by May 10th or after May 10th, we'll see another pretty good drop off that should have us in the 5%.
But what happens when the rates go down? More buyers enter the market. There's
Yeah,
more
affordability
competition.
goes up, right?
Yeah.
Affordability goes up, right? And that was one of the things that even though last year, from a price perspective was very good to buy, what really held up buyers is the fact that they couldn't afford as much, right? And their payment was much higher than what they were comfortable with, right? Which is why we started seeing, interest rate buy downs and temporary buy downs and different tools to help buyers cope with that higher payment, at least until rates come down further.
Marry the house, not the rate, or date the rate. Is that what people were
Yeah,
saying?
that was pretty popular out there. And kind of so about that, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the truth. I mean, we want to really give solid advice right when we're going someone to invest in any property, but yeah, that's a general idea, right? That rates don't last forever. Anyone who's owned a home understands that every typically 4 to 7 years, there's typically an opportunity to lower your payment, right, or draw equity, right? So understanding that and just really planning, working with a good advisor and really strategizing and planning what works best for you is super critical.
I 100% agree. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd love it if you used me, but if your advisor, if your realtor is, in the North Bay and Santa Rosa, you need to trust that person and understand that they know that market so much better than anybody else. And yeah, you might know your micro market, right? You might know like your street and the 5 streets around you because you keep an eye on it and you get the little flyers whenever you walk around and whatever, you know what that is. A typical real estate agent works in like 1.5 counties. So they're not going to know every street that you market unless they live in your area. Like I live on Mountford Drive and 95123 is my zip code. And I know that like the back of my hand. I look at it every day. What's going on, what the inventory is like, where the rates are falling. Is it up and down? What's the average? How many houses sell over listing price? All that kind of stuff. You need to know that kind of stuff because if you don't, and somebody goes, "Hey, Vito, how's the market doing?" Well, then you look like a schlub. And, that's why I do these so that I get into the practice of saying, "Hey, look, I know the market," right? So that's the same thing with your lenders, right? If you talk to a big bank, Chase or whoever, the minute you write that application, you're going to be handed off to a processor, and then you're going to be handed off to a secondary person and a third person and a fourth person. And you have to have 5, 6, 7 different phone numbers trying to figure out where your loan is, where your loan app is, where's your loan approval.
The challenge is just, and I don't like to really talk down too much of competitors, but the reality is just that you don't really know what you're going to get, right? And I think as a consumer, and also, being one at one point, it's just important to have options, right? It's important to work just like you would work with a local realtor. You should work with a local lender and someone who has a lot of options. I think that's one of the most important things as an advisor is to be able to present several options to a client. Many times there's no right and wrong, but there's one that's better for you, right? And it's important to know that and understand. I mean, so many times consumers rush into finance, right? And it's wrong. It's really the most important part of a transaction is to understand not only what you approve for, but what those payments look like, what options you have, how tax benefits work, and what are your closing costs and what does that entail, right? We get so hung up on rate and wanting to compare rate. In an environment like this, people are always searching for something that's not there, right? And we find many times that other lenders do, bait and switch, right? Everyone gets hung up on a rate. And what we don't really understand as consumers, what is the cost for that rate? And would that still make sense, right? Sometimes looking at a lower rate makes 0 sense, right? Especially with us us expecting rates to go down, right? So it really goes beyond a rate. Buying a home is really probably the largest purchase you'll make. And you really want to look at every aspect of it and really feel comfortable with who you're working with, because it makes all the difference when we get to write the offer and we're presenting on your behalf and negotiating, that you're working with the right individual, right? And that, I think, is the most important thing.
That's huge. When you have relationships with other agents and you're like, hey, it's Hector. And the other agent on the other side is like, hey, Hector, loved you on the last transaction. This is going to be a slam dunk. I know it. Right. I mean, you don't get that.
One of the most important things we do as a lender and an agent when we're presenting, when we are presenting for a buyer, is that we help the selling agent sell to their client, right? We help them present, right? We help them effectively explain our story to their client, right? And the goal of that is if they have two offers side by side and they're the same, but we've done a very good job to separate ourselves from the pack, then if two things are equal, we're likely going to get either the counter or the acceptance, right? And really, that's the name of the game, right? Is to not miss out on an opportunity that you really want, and yeah.
I'm a broker, but my office manager says it's true. It's like relationships matter 110% in this market, and working with the wrong agent, somebody has a bad name, bad reputation, or is hard to work with, it's just going to make it more difficult for you to get into a house or sell your house.
About that? You know what sucks about that? Like from the real estate or the lending side is, you as a consumer, you don't realize that till it's too late.
It's too late.
You don't realize your loan went sideways till you're trying to close, and now it's just a very hectic, stressful situation. Yep. Until you run into problems down the road, right? Everything's hunky dory up front, with rate, what have you. But as you go on, and it's almost like it's too late to turn around, that's when the problems exist, right? That's when things come up, and a lot of times that's where you can really tell the professional how well they handle it and how well they navigate those rough waters. But more important than ever, especially in this changing market, to really know who you're working with and trust them, because it absolutely makes a difference.
Well, dude, it's been 33 minutes. I appreciate you coming on board. You got to do this more often. We should schedule something like once a week.
Anytime if you basically put me on, I'm happy to talk. I'm doing stuff like this all the time. I'm following the markets. I like to think I'm a wealth of knowledge, but I do really enjoy what I do. I do really like sharing what's going on. I think one of the most important things is that as an advisor is that we're sharing data and information, right? I can, something I believe to be true, I can say it over and over till I'm blue in the face, but if we show you and we talk about, statistics and rates and data, it really should make sense, right? Yep. And it really should help, our clients and the consumers out there to really understand when is the right time for them. Thanks so much for your time, Vito. I always enjoy it. We're definitely long overdue for a lunch or a sit down, so we'll definitely knock that out in the next week as well.
I seem to remember the last time you and I went to lunch, I had to get driven home.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not doing that much anymore. I actually haven't had much to drink. Not that I'm an alcoholic, because I just lost my taste and I stopped drinking, and I've lost so much weight. I mean, not weight. I've lost a lot of.
I actually went on a dry January, and I haven't. It's just I feel good, and it's great. I'm more of like a weekend guy, right? And so here we are. It's like February 7th. I'm still rolling. I do lie though. I did cheat. Went to the Niner game in January. Nice. Had some friends. Had a couple pops. we won that game. But since then, it's been cool. This was just a nice change, a little more clarity, and I'm hoping that the waistline starts to improve too.
Well, anytime you want to go on a hike when you're here,
Yeah, man,
we can
sounds good.
do that. And then, every morning I'm there at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm happy to hang out with you and get you in the gym there a little bit.
Appreciate it, man. Always appreciate it. We'll look forward to the next one.
All right. I'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.
You betcha. Take care.